Welcome to the Old World Rose Clock. This is a really unique piece because we've done some kind of crazy combining and stuff. If you're interested in new techniques and different surfaces and how to move things and switch them around a little bit, then this is the project for you. What we've done here is we've taken oval pieces that are just flat boards made out of MDF like these rectangles are. Okay, and then what we've done is we've just stacked them just like that. And that's what gives us this two framed kind of look. So we've got a very, very affordable surface that we've kind of dressed up and made it a little bit more elegant by stacking it, and it gives it almost like a framed effect. When you prop it into one of these iron wall racks, then you end up with something that looks like a whole banjo kind of clock. Very, very expensive looking, very, very affordable. The nice thing about one of these is if you've got a section of your wall that you want to hang art on, but you like to change things for the seasons, then, let me grab this out from my pile here, then very easily when Christmas time comes along, you take the Old World clock out and you put the Santa Claus in. And then you don't ever change where the hole is on your wall. If it fits in here, it can hang there. And that is just a brilliant, brilliant improvement, I guess. Okay, so our clock is also made with background papers. And this is a piece that I used from here. And it's on this frame. So we've taken background papers, we've taken texture crackle, we've done a background paper clock, so you don't have to paint the clock, and the numbers are all going to be exactly spaced, and you've got all the detail numbers as well. And so we've done a multimedia, effect, painted some roses on it, and I just think that you're going to have so much fun painting this. To begin our project, I want to show you my inspiration for this. I wanted to make a clock that would go with our roses. And so I've got this lovely, you could have this be you could put a word in this or anything like that. And I made some coasters, okay? And then I also made a little coaster box, okay, that has little feet and a lid and things like that. And this is the Monogram Rose coaster set. Anyway, so I wanted to make a clock that would go with this because I think it could really use a little companion piece. And we brought in these fantastic new surfaces that are, frankly, a little bit boring to the to your initial take, maybe, I guess. So what they are is they're just plain shapes. But what we discovered in the meantime is that you can stack them and layer them, which is in essence what we did here with the coaster. We put cork on the back of just a plain square and made it into a coaster. You could easily put a flat piece of wood on to another piece of wood and make it any kind of shape that you want. The addition of a finial in between would make this into, let me see if I can get you a sideways view, would make this into a lovely dessert type serving tray that you could, pop apart or, store for later use. You could put feet on the bottom of it and make this piece into a tray with the addition of handles. There's just so many things you can do with them. We became very, very excited. Now what I want to do is I want to add another element to it. I want to take these collage papers and I want to add them to here. They don't fit though. Okay, what do I do now? I have this space here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and layer them. I'm going to cut off some of this antiquing so that I get a continuous flow down here and don't get this dark line in the middle. But I think I can just make it be so that you won't even catch it. And then when I put that on, the words will be behind in my background. And I think that'll be quite lovely, a nice element to it. I love adding elements that make things appear deeper and deeper and deeper. Okay, so, and the very first thing I need to do is apply my Decopage medium, which is a brand new medium by Deco Art. It's about maybe a year old. I tried the traditional podge type things, and I was getting lifting and bubbling and reactivation when I painted on top of them. Kid you not, it took me a year or 2 years to figure out a glue. Basically, this is a glue that won't do that. And this is such a glue. I have used it for a bunch of projects now, and it works like a dream. But as I'm getting ready to get my big brush out to do this, I don't know if you can see how nasty this brush is, but I have these in about 3 different kinds of levels of nastiness. And so I just wanted to show just because it's so important that we know how to take care of our brushes. This is a brush cleaner. These are little raised, little sharp points. So they'll scrape and tease out any bits that you have in your brush. And then this is the brush cleaner and restorer. Watch what happens here. I have no doubt this is going to be disgusting. Yeah, it's like paste in there. I had this sitting in water, and look at how much is just released. Just water did not release that. I didn't just load my brush up and do this. This is, yeah. Okay, I've got got my board ready. I've got my brushes ready, and I'm using the matte finish of this medium. And the reason we want to use matte is because we want our paint to adhere. And I'm just going to go ahead and apply an even coat of this glue to my surface. I could seal my surface. This is a really hard pressed surface, so I don't think I'm going to worry about it. It's going to be decorative in nature. It's not going to hang outside. So I'm just going to go ahead and just apply my glue. We'll apply the glue to, and the glue is very thick, so it doesn't flow nicely. Okay, so you really have to kind of work it in. This is a really excellent reason to own the brush cleaner and restorer, because you are applying glue with your nice brushes. So you want to be able to get that glue out. And I will tell you that brush cleaner and restorer cleans out paint off of fabric. It cleans out tags off of things. The tack it over and over, it'll take that off your stencil. You want to test it on things you're unsure of, because it will remove the varnish off of your antique piano too. So, you know, you want to be careful. And it is very safe to use. It's non-toxic, biodegradable, all that kind of stuff. I have no idea how something can be that safe if it does that good a job of removing things. But they've tested it, and it is a reliable, reputable product. So I'll believe them. All right, I'm on my non-stick mat too. I'm not worried about the glue getting on here. I'm not going to have to change my table mat all the time. If I had a towel underneath this, I'd be getting lint and fluff in my on my surface, so I wouldn't want to do this on a towel. The glues is where things start getting a little bit messy. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll eventually get there. And then I'm going to trim my papers. I'll show you that part. We'll do that just now. Okay, so I'll dip my brush in the water, set that piece aside, and then I'm going to trim a paper. Now you don't want to get glue. I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off of here. And I'm just going to trim off. I don't need to worry about, I want the middle. I'm not worried about these edges, but I don't want this dark line up the middle. So I'm just going to trim a nice straight 3 rows up. Gets me mostly out of that area. And the next thing that I will do, and I guess I wanted to trim this off as well, so let's see that, and I did it upside down, so we'll trim the top off of this. 3 rows about. Go fairly straight, but I'm not going to worry about not being, it'll overlap, and I don't think that you'll see anything. Okay, so I want the middle area done, so I'll flip my paper over. I don't want glue down here because that will stick to my my paper, and I don't want that to happen yet. Now I do want to know what is upside right on my my surface. So what I am going to do is, number one, let's talk about this. Okay, I've got a piece of yellow tracing paper on a roll, and I'd like to point out that yellow tracing paper on a roll is not just for tracing. It's also for doing things like finding center. So what I'm going to do is lay this down, glue side up, trace around. Okay, now I know how big I am. And then what I will do is I will fold it in half, lining it up, and then I'll fold it in half again. Okay, I want to know where the straight line is across, and I want to know where it is across my piece. So I'm putting a line outside over here and on both sides. Now I'm going to lay my piece right on top of this, and I'm going to center it over its oval. Get it straight on there. Okay. Should be straight. Now, if I leave it alone and I don't mess with it, then I know that that's my straight line. And if that's my straight line, then what I can do is line my words up with this straight line. I'll move that over, and I'll apply my glue to the back of my paper on a dry area. Okay, just get that going. I'm not going to take it all the way over the top. I don't want to make a mess at this point, because I don't want this other paper to stick. And it'll start getting kind of soft. You can use this with all manner of papers. I'm going to use it with burlap. I've got an idea for burlap. I'm going to go out further than you think you're going to need to. And in this case, I'm going to go all the way to my edge, so I'm going to grab another mat. Let's just slide right under here. And I can make it messy without getting the front messy and without wrecking the papers. Okay. There's that piece. Take the mat away. And slide this puppy back over. Make sure I'm lined up. Okay. I want the papers to go on straight. So I'm going to go ahead and make that be a center mark. Those lines. They're a little bit cockeyed. And then smooth. Okay, now I'll get the glue on the other one, and then that's going to get lined up right there. Alright, and now I've got my things still on this paper, but I could take it off now because I know that the top one is straight. So now just get that kind of lined up there. And I do have to take it off of here because I'm sticking. Okay, so just get it on there and then peel it off. Like that straight, almost. On there. Okay. Now when I get ready to do this, I'm going to be doing all kinds of extra stuff to this, so on top. So you won't notice that seam there. Okay. And then once you get it pressed down nicely, then you need to cut it. Okay, I'm going to use the retractable detail knife, which is wonderful because it keeps you out of harm's way. That is the sharpest blade I've ever seen. And I will just run that along on a cutting mat, and I will, whoops, let me get that piece right there. Where the glue is soft, sometimes the paper will grab, okay? Okay, I'll put my retractable blade back in. You just press it down and slide it down. Okay, excellent, excellent new advance to those. If that little lid falls off, you are going to cut yourself bad, so be careful of that if you have the non-retractable. Okay, then we take our glue and we make a sandwich out of it. We're making a paper sandwich. We've got glue on the piece, glue on the back, and glue on top. And so we'll just coat everything. If you get anything that looks like little bubbles, don't worry about them. Like I've got one right there. Don't worry about it until you are all dry, because a lot of times it'll soften up. It's almost like the paper wants to think that it's going to stretch, and then after it dries, it shrinks back down and everything's tight. I haven't had any problems with it yet. Alright, now to clean my nonstick mat back up, and I've got last time's project on here as well, what I've got is just a vial of water, and I just mist everything with just a little bit of water. I've got that glue on there, gold. The spatters are actually one of the hardest things to get off because they're just little pin dots, and so they don't like to wipe off. They come off, just if you just scratch on them, they come right off. But I like to use the three-sided squeegee, which is a wonderful tool in its own right, but it's a great cleanup tool because look, it'll just scrape everything right off, and then I can just wipe it on a paper towel. So if I have any crusty things like glue and stuff like that, it'll just scrape right on off. Like all those little pin dots, yeah, takes them right away. Anyway, but then you can just wipe it off with your paper towel. And like I've got a little bit of glue residue here, you just rub on that and it cleans right off. So very easy cleanup, and it's, you know, everything comes off of this. This is heat resistant. The wood putty cleans off of this. You can use a hot glue right on it. I've used it as my palette, just squirted my paint right on there because it cleans up so easily, who cares? And then I can just wipe it off. On big projects, it's great. You can hot glue, you can lay your iron on it, everything. One of the things that I wanted to share are these cute little keyholes and keys, and they have little brads which are pretty much useless for wood application. But I think I painted these little feet right here to be gold, and wouldn't it be darling to add that little bit of a brass element on there, whoops, hello, a little bit of a brass element on here to make it into a little locking kind of situation. I just think it's cute. And then make a little tassel out of the keys. Really cute stuff coming out of the craft world right now. Very nice quality. They're not bendable and flexible. They're just sweet. They make these in knobs, keyholes, book plates, and then these other keyholes. And we've got some keys with words on them as well. They're just sweet. Okay, on this one little side right here, I did go ahead and keep a little wrinkle. You never know. So what I'm going to do is right here, my glue might have dried or something. Got a little bubble. I'm just going to slip that and use the point. Okay, hang on just a second. I've got a tool for this. Okay, I'm going to just lay this back with this little pick. Okay, get that up there. And then I'll just take a little bit of glue, my decoupage page, medium. A little round brush. I'll just hold this back and I'll apply my glue. Okay, there we go. I'll glue it down and then I'll just put a little glue on top. So that's how you can fix it. Anywhere you have a little something going on, you can just pierce it, lift it up, and add a little extra glue. I'm going to base my background with my antique white, and notice that this is going to be way too dark for over here, okay, but I have a plan. This is just a base coat, and it's an undercoat at that, so we're just going to base it once. Be careful of your edges. If you want them to be the burned dark, don't get paint on them. Otherwise you'll have to prep your edges, which you could do with a brown, like a dark chocolate or something. I kind of like the edges left alone, but sometimes I'm a little messy. Oh, you know what, and in this case, never mind, we're going to do them in gold. I forgot we were matching the other. Okay, so we'll just get an even coat on there and allow it to dry. Okay, I'm going to want a little bit of dark chocolate where I'm going to crackle. And I know I'm going to have my clock face, say, up here, so I think I want to crackle up next to my clock face. And actually, you know, I'm thinking, now that I say this, I'll probably want to go ahead and put my clock face on now. Is that a true statement? I think that's a true statement. So I'll grab my clock face and we'll have that. Alright, so we're going to cut to the outside edge. And my clever husband instructed me that if you move your paper into your scissors, it works a little better. I'm going to try to leave even amounts of band. If you mess it up and you cut a little bit of it off, no problem, because you can just line it back on. So I'm going to leave my hole for the clock hole. This has got to be drilled, so in order to make this, you've obviously got to be able to have access to somebody with a drill. Okay, I've got to do the same thing with this oval as I did with the other. I'm gonna mark it. I'm gonna use my marker this time because I like it a little bit darker than pencil was. Okay, and I'm going to fold it to find my centers. Raw. Got glue on there from before. Okay, and I'll fold it extra and fold it in half again. Make sure I've got it all lined up. Okay, and then the important thing is that you go ahead and you make your line here because you want to be able to see it from underneath. And we want to know where straight up is because that's where our clock is going to sit. I think I'll go ahead and just make a line here. That's silly. I can't see it if I make my line there. Now I can lay this on my line. Okay, and now I can see where 12 o'clock needs to go. Got my clock cut out. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about the colors matching. Okay, that's not what we're about right now. All right, and then I'm going to apply glue. Same procedure as before. So we'll apply glue here. And I'm thinking-ish. Don't want it tucked too high up because I don't want too much of an odd space down here. Okay, so just jockey it down just a little bit. So ish here. And I don't care if I go outside of my lines a little bit. Okay, and then on my palette paper, I'll flip this over so that I don't get the mess all over my other stuff. I'll do the back. I'm going to hold it down so it doesn't slide all through the glue. Okay, now what we need is a T-square. Okay, and get this thing on here in what looks to be a fairly straight angle. And don't make it go straight down. Okay, do we feel like that's about right? Okay, I'm going to call that right. And I'll scrunch it down. Oops, put glue on my elbow. Now is the time that you get to change things, so make sure that you don't put it down until you're sure you've got it where you want it. And now I'll go ahead and do my top coat. A little bubble, chase that out. And sometimes, like I said, they just appear, like there won't be any bubbles and then suddenly you'll have a bubble. Mostly they dry out. Alright, now I want to get my piece centered inside my words, and I'm going to use a see-through ruler. And these are flexible little see-through rulers. What I like about this is you can, obviously you can see through. So this is about 1.5 inches. I'll make it 1.5 inches from the side, and we'll see if that comes out pretty evenly. Yeah. And then I can go here, and that's voila, underneath. Not quite what I wanted to do. About 2 inches and just at 2 inches, so it could come down just a hair. Make sure my side to sides are pretty straight. And then I want to mark this. If I mark it, then I'll know where it belongs all the time, if that makes sense. And then I'll also know where I don't want to get gunk later. Okay, so I've got that marked. Okay, I've got my texture crackle medium. I'm going to do a couple of things with this. I'm going to texture crackle and I'm going to crackle. I think on this one I'm not going to crackle. I'm just going to texture crackle. So I'm going to dig some of this stuff out. And notice that it'll come out in these like kind of looking hard looking substances. But notice what happens. I'm going to work it. If I feel crunchies in it, then it's dry. But if it makes it smooth like this, I think I saw a little crunchy right there, then it's a thick zootropic material, which means that it gets creamier when you work it. So notice that now it's creamy and spreadable and wonderful. Okay, so you just have to work it just a little bit. If you keep the lid on, I've had this for, I don't know, probably maybe 6 months, 8 months, and it's doing just fine. And I've even lost that inner seal. I'm going to take 2 piles of this, and I'm going to mix some with my antique white. And I'm going to mix some with bleach sand. Okay, and wipe that off. I don't mind if I have a little bit tainted in there. You don't want to do more than 50% paint or you'll break the structure of the crackle. Okay. We're going to use the rubbery part of the squeegee, and it'll just do this lovely little low amount of this crackle. Okay, and that's what we want. A little bit here, a little bit there. We don't want it everywhere, but we do want, so we're going to cover up some of those words a little bit, and the crack where the words are. And that is just going to make our deception better. I don't have to worry so much. I just want to kind of mix and match, and then we can take a little paint over that, and we're going to do a little bit of glazing as well. Not everywhere. And you want some in and some out. And if I get a little bit where my paint is going to be, I can just wipe it off with my finger. This is what I love to do, is these backgrounds, because they just get deeper and deeper, and your painting just takes on a richer kind of a look. Okay. Would I love to write all these little words all over this? Absolutely not. Okay, now I'll let that dry, and it'll crackle as it's drying. Okay, this is still a little bit wet, but as long as I kind of stay out of it, I don't care. I'm going to get a big brush. And I want to do some crackling on this, but I want something to show underneath the crackle. So I want to come over here and add some brown underneath so that it will show. If I just crackle, oh, I have a new brown. Can I get anything else out of my old brown? Yes, just enough. If I crackle, just a little, and where I don't want my crackle, I don't have to worry about the brown coming through. I'll come over into my clock, and I could probably go into here just a little bit. I don't want to cover up all my numbers. Now, it's not going to be brown spots when we get done. This is where my flowers are going to be. I'm going to reach up and reach over, and then I think I want to take one of these little doodads right here. And maybe put it down here. I haven't decided quite yet what I'm going to do. It'd be interesting to do an oval and an oval and an oval. All kinds of possibilities with these. I am super duper duper excited about them. When your brown is dry, you need to add a little bit of crackle, and you want to do this really, really, really scantly. You put it on really flat, and you might have to go and check it as it's drying and give it just a little bit of a brush to even it out. You don't want it all ridgy, because then you'll have ridges in your paint. And it'll kind of curl back like it's repelling something or something like that. So do watch it right when it's freshly applied and flatten it back out. And it can be dry. This is a chemical reaction product, not a drying time reaction product. If you use the Delta crackle medium, and see, this is already getting ridgy. Let me show you what it looks like. Get your way in there. And can you see those? Let's see, get you shine. Anyway, I don't know if you can tell or not, but all I do is I go back in, and as long as I'm not messing with the top coat of paint, it's not going to do anything. I can mess with this coat as long as I want. Anyway, the Delta crackle medium is a drying time reaction, and so you have to get on that right quick. This will crack a year later, so you're good. Alright, now how thick I put on the paint on top is how thick my cracks will appear. Okay, now I want to match this color pretty spot on, but I don't want to spend a lot of time in there, so I'm going to go ahead and just pat on some paint and then feather my edges down. Okay, and then that will crack and expose that little bit right there, but it won't leave me with a big brown edge. Then the rest I'm going to slip slap heavily over my piece, and then when I get to the crackle areas, and being careful around the clock, I just don't want a lot of the clock to disappear. I'm going to slip slap every old which way and make sure it's thick. I want to be able to see those cracks. I want that aged look. And then on top of this, we're going to also put the texture crackle as well, so that it will unify with the other part. And then of course we'll glaze and we'll do all that other stuff. So I'm laying my brush down, and I am getting in and getting out of the area that has any crackle medium. If you spend any time, the more you brush it, the finer the crack will get. And I don't want fine cracks. Ooh, I got a little heavy right there. Did you see that? Okay, I'll go in there and doctor that in a second. I want to go near the edge, but not over the edge. And I'll do that a little bit better with a smaller brush. And don't forget, I can put my dark line back in if I mess it up too much, which I kind of am trying to do really well here. Okay. Getting nice cracks already. And you've got to stay out of the areas as it's cracking. The only thing you can really do is lean and touch in. Okay, now I'll go with this in my brush, and I'll just clean up next to that. And we're going to shade and float that down just a little bit anyway. Oh, not a very steady hand today. And you know what? What's neat about this lesson is it doesn't really matter, because we're going to do these layering things, and so I can have just a little bit of that I don't feel so well, have a cold kind of hand, and it'll be okay. Alright, now here I'm going to go into something a little bit lighter, and I'm going to just touch in here to make the brown disappear without making, with making my lines disappear as well. And I can go in and feather some of this down just a little bit more where it's lighter. Yeah, that makes it just kind of fade. And now we wait and let it crackle. Alright, now I've got this all dry. I'm going to go in with my texture crackle mixed in these other colors, mixed in the base coat colors, and pick up here and there and add a little bit of our texture. And this is getting a little bit too thick. I think I'm going to go back to my squeegee. It leaves just a little bit of the lumpy edge when you do it without the rubberized edge to it, so then I'll just flatten that out. And I can be over the tops of some of, I don't want this everywhere, but I do want it kind of streaked in and out. It's going to make our textures go together. Just having it base coated would not be enough. And once again, this adds just another element of depth to the piece. I can have it under where my flowers are going to be. And anything I don't like on the edge can be smoothed out. Okay, nice and rough. And I love that this is just getting more and more mottled looking as we go. And then you just wipe off your squeegee, and you can take it to the sink and wash it while it's still wet. Alright, I think we have a really good base for our clock. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pieces apart, and this has got a real rough finish to it. So I'm going to take a sanding disc. These come in, these are two different grits. This comes in a really fine and then a slightly rougher, and then this is your more rough grit. And there's one grit for each side. And I think I'm going to need something a little bit stronger, so this will come off in kind of like little chunks. And if I wanted it really flat, if I was going to use it on a tray, I could kind of go in there and just isolate those edges just a little bit, but I don't need that. And I just want it nice and smooth for painting the roses. And I got, when you're applying your medium and stuff, I kind of went diagonally across this. And so you want to be careful with random. Like, it could be randomly diagonal, and I guess it was, but we want to probably random in a little more random style. So be careful that, you know, if you have a kind of an angle that you go at, make sure that you turn your piece and apply it from different angles. That will keep you a little bit more random, and you won't end up with these leaning things here in the middle. That will work out because the roses are going to go here, but yeah, not always your optimal. I still like it. If I didn't like it, I'd show you how to fix it. Okay, and we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, and then I will wipe off with a paper towel, and we'll get ready to paint some roses. One of the things we need to address is we're going to be gluing these together, and we're also going to be drilling holes. And that hole will have to go back through both pieces of wood. This is something that you can do with just a household drill. And you'll want to decide at what place in your process that you're going to drill your hole. Obviously, these are kind of universal. We call these the essential surfaces, so we don't want to have them with holes pre-drilled because you could do so many things with them. So when you're getting ready to find somebody or go out to the garage and drill your hole, you want to keep in mind, if you don't have experience, maybe this is the time for you to drill that hole so that you don't, if you mess it up, you don't ruin the artwork or whatever. But if you drill an incorrect hole, no problem. You can use magical wood filler. This is a Decorative product, so you could fill the hole with some, like, say, hot glue. Maybe you get it off center, it's not quite right, whatever. Fill it with some hot glue or something like that, and then top it with the wood filler, and then just patch your colors with the colors in your palette. You could hang this with 2 holes here and a ribbon. There's so many options. You could paint this sideways, put your clock in the middle, roses on each side. There's just a million things that you could do. So be sure when you're getting ready to drill the hole, do glue your pieces together at that point. In my brain, I always leave the hole drilling until the end, which makes my husband very nervous. I have the roses from my, let's see if I can get you right on here, the roses from my rose coaster box, which is this project. Now, I've got the glazed, this I did with colors and not with papers, but I've glazed it to make it darker. So you could keep this as light as it is, or you could go a little bit darker like this. But what I'm doing is I've got a rose there that I like that I'm going to use as my example. And so I always look to inspiration as well. Don't think that like I have a rose in my head that comes out. Like, it's not like that. I look at pictures of roses and I see ones that I like, and then I practice them. I actually, just because I've been gone for a while and I've been out and about, I went ahead and threw a little rose onto a Post-it note just to make sure. Some days I'm in a long-necked, throated kind of rose mood, and that's the day where I need to practice a couple of times to shorten and squat up my roses. So sometimes, like even us designer painter people have to go and practice as well. And then I wanted to show, I thought this was really funny. Ooh, that's really funny. I missed an edge. Yikes. Yeah, we won't talk about that. So I thought this was really interesting. I went to this rose video to look for a specific color that I had used or something, some note that I knew was on there. And I was doing this back and forth on the camera when I filmed this project, and I was amazed at how much you could tell how shiny these metallics are with that little glimmer back and forth in the lights. And so I just thought I'd point that out. These metals look so rich. It's really quite amazing, and that was done with the I think brass powders. I didn't look for that part, and I guess I need to keep this out and finish it. Anyway, so as I'm getting ready, I just wanted to point out that I use examples too, so I'll keep this near me. And then I've even got, this is my original of the worksheet, so I've got my steps here, and I need to be reminded sometimes. So it's not like it's all stored up in my head and stuff like that. I actually use those tools as well. Okay, so now I'm going to take these two pieces apart because why have them together? Another reason to leave them. Now to design this and to make this into what I want, I'll leave it stacked for this piece. I know I want a cluster of roses down in here, so the weight is going to need to be down here. And so I'm assuming one of these, and I've got the triple threat Ghostwriter, which is white ceramic lead, gray ceramic lead, roller ball for transferring your patterns, and eraser on the back end. Useful tool all in one, cannot believe it. It is just a winner all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to use this, and I don't think the white, oh, I can see it. Okay, I'm going to use this to sketch on the approximate size of my roses. You want one to be the more dominant one, and I'm wondering if this other one needs to be, and that rough texture is eating up my lead here. If that one needs to be a little guy, and then have a little bit of stuff coming out there, just to see what the weight is, or do I want the 3? So always the questions, right? So I know I need room for leaves back here and greenery. I think he can be a little bit smaller. This pencil erases with water, spit, varnish, just anything. It will not end up staying on your piece, so I can sketch like this all over the place, and as long as I haven't done something silly like embed it in wet paint, then I'll be good. Alright, I think the first thing I'm going to do is start with some green in the background. Okay, we'll get the palette on here, and we'll put a little bit of our medium. This is the Traditions Faux Finishing Medium. Put a little bit of that on there, and what that does for us is it makes things transparent without being watery. Pardon me. I'm going to go into light avocado with just a little bit of paint and mix it till I see it being transparent, because I don't want to put like a blob of dark light avocado right on here and then it's like a mess. And if I want this not so green, I can mix just a little bit of my pink with it, and it's going to muddy it up, and that will tone it down into a muddy green, which is more suitable for a background. Fresher, brighter green will be foreground things, and in the background will be muddier like that. So I kind of see where I've got my roses, and I am going to go with a big one, a little one, and then a bud up here. So I want to just tint where they're going to sit down, and that's too tinted, of course, right? Go with a little bit of our pink. Just give us some background, not so light. We've got to have something carrying those roses, and they're going to cast shadows and things like that. The medium will help you move around over the texture as well. And I don't want it so dark that it looks like those are leaves or things like that. Okay, and then this will also help in blocking the design. Yeah. And when you do a great big blob like that, hey. And so block that out and see if we like how much space that's filled. Oop, too much. I'm using way more of this than I thought I would. Okay, and notice that I'm way back here on my handle. That's because that's how you will get a looser stroke, is by being way back on the handle. Now this is going to be shaded down like these coasters are, so we'll do some of this glazing and stuff in the corners. And I don't want to do that first because I want to make sure of what I need. And then I think we're going to need a little something up here, maybe like a little I don't know, something. I'm going to let that be determined by what happens down here. So a lot of times what happens, it's like going on a trip. You know, you get a flat tire, so then you stay overnight in the town that you weren't planning on staying in or something like that. You let the journey play out, and that's when I'm designing. That's what I do, and that's what I'm doing right now is designing on camera. Now I'll go a little bit stronger green, kind of up the middle of those greens. And that will be like in that shaded area. Okay, and do we like how that's sitting down there? I think I do. I might want it out just a little bit more out here. Okay, and the nice thing about being on camera is I can look up to the camera to see. Now something that I get my perspective skewed sometimes. So they make this wonderful thing called a reducing glass. And what this does, you know how if you get up and away from your project, then it looks different, right? What this does to you, I can actually see all of the area that I'm painting in this glass all in one eyeball here. And so what this does is it makes it look like I'm standing far away from it. So now you no longer have to get up from the table, walk across the room, sit back down, get up from the table, walk across the room, that kind of thing. You can just pick up the reducing glass and go, oh yeah, okay, I like that. Gives you an overall view, and because it's magnified the opposite way, it makes it appear far away and small. Not really far away, like you can't see it, but just enough far away. And it was brought to my attention at convention that this is something that I don't talk about, and one class in particular used them over and over and over again, and they were sharing amongst themselves. And because I tend to be the person that likes tools and things, the reason I don't use the reducing glass is because I use my camera lens, which is right there. I use it, the little mini screen, to be my reducing glass. So I have a built-in reducing glass for myself, and I use it constantly. And so this is one that you can use to help you when you're trying to eyeball and see if things work well. Now I'll need to get this dry because it's a medium. It's going to be slower drying. I'll go ahead and hit the blow dryer, and that way it's not going to lift. That's when you get lifting, is when you try to force and paint quicker than your mediums are drying. All right, now we'll begin painting our rose. I want one to be looking that way, and I'm going to do this one looking kind of down that way. You don't want your roses all looking in the same direction, or you'll look like you have soldiers. And so loading the brush is really important. And I've got to tell you, in case you're worried that I'm getting on a rose kick, I am. And it's really funny because I did this little box that I think just came out the most precious and charming, and you know, painted the little metal feet and stuff. And then we've got these garden trugs that I think absolutely have to have roses in a little word, and it's pre-antiqued and distressed. It's fantastic. And then we've got flat signs and all these things. Oh my gosh, I'm just like, ah, ready. You can, once you have your rose down, you can paint a rose on anything, and it's going to look fantastic. So you know, don't get the rose practiced, and then go for it. And the process is very, very similar for a lot of roses. It's just placement and direction and stuff like that after that. So I've switched to a slightly bigger brush than I've used before. It's the 1/2 inch. I'm going to load the toe, which is the longer end, in the white, and then the heel in the whatever color red this is, antique mauve. Okay, and I'll just blend. It really helps quite a bit if you put your colors in the same placement that you're going to blend, and usually you should blend with your toe kicked out to this side, just because of you don't want to, you wouldn't do this because you have to you'd have to cack your hand back the wrong way. Okay, so you want to, my white should in theory be there, because you will not believe how many times you'll put your paintbrush toe into the wrong color. Very, very common. Now this is not as juicy as, say, like a Donna Dewberry rose. This is, notice that my paint is very flat on my palette. I'm not trying to get this done in one stroke. I'm trying to get this done in a balance and a softness of paint, and I'm not knocking that other rose style. I'm just saying it's not as juicy because there are a lot of painters out there that know how to do that technique. But I am loading it over and over again to get a saturation of color and to get a blend. But I will, and this right here is called a blending blending strip. Okay. And we'll go here, and the very first thing we're going to do, now you're going to put your brush back on the flat of the brush. You don't want to paint with the toe, otherwise you'll end up with only white. And we're going to go here, and we're going to give it a couple of, now look at what I've got here. I've got dark at the bottom, and I've got a naked spot in the middle. Okay, that's because I haven't let the paint meet in the middle. Okay, that is a bad thing. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to make sure that my paints are overlapping a little bit. That way they actually meet, and I'll walk back and forth a little bit right there. Okay, and then I'll come here, and I'll restroke. That's much better. Okay, and we let that dry. Now I could go on and paint my other rows, but I want to just show you straight through how to paint the rows. I need to let that dry for a second though, and I think I'll just go ahead and turn this off and hit the blow dryer. Okay, what I highly recommend is painting more than one rose at a time. That way you don't have to worry about drying, and you just go from all the back sections to the next rows to the next rows, and then by the time you get back to the original rows, then you're ready for the next one. Okay, now these are going to drop down just a little bit, and I've lost my white. And I've still lost my white. Okay, and I'm just going to give them 3 little strokes, just slightly dropped down from. Okay, and then I'm going to give it 1 middle stroke, and I'm seeing that I am losing my white, but I can go back and I can fix that. Okay, now we've got those 3. I'm going to just put my chisel of my brush down and put my chisel of my brush down, not touching the edge of that center petal. Okay, and then not connecting them, I'm just going to go ahead and swoop in, and I can do this choppy like that, and that gives it a slightly ruffled look on the front. I'll tell you, we have 2 concerns. We've switched to the straight down method of painting, and now sometimes my brush will cover up what I'm doing. So I'm trying to be conscious of that, and as I grow in the new format, hopefully that will be a truth. Okay. So then we're going to go, and I'm looking at my step-by-step because I can't remember what I'm doing next. I'm going to close up a little bit more. Okay. Sometimes you can give that little tap at the end. Now before I do the next close, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and do my outer petals. And these are going to be angular, like that one's hi-ya chop. Then I'm going to come in at an angle, hi-ya chop. And if you make that hi-ya chop sound as you're doing it, then it makes it fun. And of course I'm kidding. And then another hi-ya chop. Don't forget to turn your piece. This is where I would be on an Artist Buddy if I wasn't too lazy to go grab one. And then that last one is that bring it in and kind of slide it. And it kind of hangs out like a little tongue right there. Okay? And then that's your kind of middle format for your rose. And you'll find that your roses, like I said earlier, change with your temperament for the day. Don't forget to dress with medium as you need it. And then now we're going to do these. Did you see when I came across over here, I muddied up this front of my petal. That's why I wanted to go ahead and do that. I'm using a bigger brush. Sometimes you have to go out of format when you're using a little bit bigger brush. So then we'll come in and we'll close these up with some inner petals. And I'm just kind of doing the same technique. And because I'm not afraid of this chopping movement, I think that it makes it slightly fluffier. Okay, and then we'll do the centers. These just little teardrop, drag it and go, and there we have a rose. Now, what's neat about this is that is where this rose was when it's the same exact palette, it's exactly the same technique and all that kind of stuff. This rose was that rose before I glazed it and did the other steps. So it's interesting to see a transformation like that. All right, now I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to do the smaller rose. Okay, and I've got a new brush. These brushes come in all of these sizes, and this is my old brush. There you are. But they come in all these sizes, and so you can do the most tiniest little roses with the tiny brush. Nice once you find a brush that really paints a good rose to just get the set, because then you have it in every size and you can translate that same rose into every size. Okay, so we'll dress our brush with the medium and get all loaded up. And I think I'll go ahead and come back to you when I am loaded up, since that's exactly the same. All right, next we're going to paint this little guy right here, and we want to make sure, he's down here, that I'm going to point him in the direction. That is his eye, and he's seeing in, and so I want this guy to point out that way. And I'm going to paint this one at a speed that I would normally paint. And you can see how fast you can learn to paint a rose, but I'm not doing it to show you speed. I'm showing you that it's very casual painting, not as uptight as everybody thinks roses are. Okay, so I'm just going to paint it and try to keep my yammer chatter down a little bit. Drop those other ones in. Takes me twice as long to paint because I talk about everything. All right, so then we're going to go here, close them up, go here, close them up. And remember, those chops can really add to your to the fluffiness of your rose. If you want them not to be fluffy, don't add so many chops. Okay, now we'll start coming out the outside. And I really do like an angular looking rose. That is my favorite kind of painted rose. Of course, I'll probably change that. Change my rose like I change clothes, right? If you need an extra petal because something's not working, throw one in. Just add it. Okay. Now we'll close this guy in. He doesn't need as many big strokes out there because he's a little rose. And then just give it a little bit of that. There. Just a simple teeny rose. See how fast that went, though. And it's not like it was fast. It was just simply, yep. And it's just a little check mark. And the strokes are just so short. And they truly are, when you're looking at them, there's a stroke, a stroke, a stroke. I've got a firm handle on my brush. I'm not doing any of that fancy, loosey stuff. And I'm plopping those almost like a machine right exactly where they go. And the only technique that is hard is the one that comes in here, these little elephant ear things. And that is put it down sideways and push more with the toe of your brush and then slide to a chisel. So I'm really kicking out the toe and sliding along. So I'll do it one more time. So I'm here, I kick and then start sliding and pick the brush up. Okay, that is what I call a little elephant ear. I don't know why I call it that. I think maybe more like a teacup handle or something. But that is what will do those inside little strokes. Okay, they're little tornado strokes, aren't they? Something like that. Anyway, that is how you get these detail parts right here. That's the only tricky stroke in a rose. And I know I sound like I'm worried about people being afraid of roses, but I kind of am. That's the thing I've heard the most about over the years. Now I'll dress my brush, and I'm going to paint the little rose bud. Okay, and I think I want him up here, so we're just going to do just what the center of the brush would be like. Okay, I'm going to try and, now this is where, look at my hand, guess what? This is where we whip out the bridge. Okay, that's what these things are for. And look at how see-through that is. That means that you can see what's happening to your art project. Like, you can make these out of wood, but then you can't tell if where you're painting is getting out of control with what you've already painted. But I just put my hand totally in my rose, and then I was about to track it across my piece. Bridges are not only to keep you up and over lumpy things like trays and stuff like that, it's also, and giving you the control, but it's also about keeping your hands out of your own paint. So now I can move this, and I can rest my arm on it, I can rest my wrist on it, I can rest my hand just on it. There's all kinds of ways to use these. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to do that little center, and definitely little chops. And I just want him kind of little because we'll close him up with the green stuff. Okay, I totally skipped a step. The step that I skipped, and you'll see how important it was was the very first step. Okay, I had undercolored and then shaded to give that body to my rose. And I didn't do that here. What do I do? Okay, so like I'm saying like, oh yeah, that's exactly the same. Well, almost. So let's see what we can do when we forget a step. We're going to go into our shading color, which is going to be Napa Red. And I'm going to make me a little float here with my Napa Red. And then I'm going to go in here and establish that. Okay, and then I'll come down here and I'll do the same thing down here. Now that gives us, it's a little bit glowy looking, like I'm not loving it. So I'm going to go back to it and I'm going to mix it with the antique mauve. Yeah, that's a little better because there's nothing under it. It was looking, the Napa Red is a very transparent color, and so then that was making it look like transparent over white, which is electric. All right, and then we'll come over here and do the same thing. Give that just a little bit more body. Now they have that little meat to them. So here I have my worksheet, and there I managed to mess it all up. Oh well. But we can recover nicely from that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to glaze our rose. Okay, so now that I'm dry, now we'll go ahead and glaze just a little bit. So we'll take a little bit of glaze in our brush, and we can float. I've got the Napa, but I think I'll put a little bit of that mauve with it, just to not have it be so transparent. And then we're going to glaze one side or the other of our roses. And I think, so part of me is going to look at this and say which side's prettier, and I actually do think this side's prettier, so I'll leave it open to that side. Oops, a little glaze. And then this is just going to tint this side of the rose. Tint it back just a little bit, and I can go into a little bit of soft black if I decide, whoa, that's really dark. If I want it tinted just even a little bit further. Okay, so that gives that side just a little bit more of a darkness. And then I can go into yellow, which is a primary yellow. And I can give it just a little bit of sun-kissed ness over here. And that is just going to give it a little bit of a brightness. Okay. And let's soften it down if we think it's getting too carried away. Now we'll go in and we'll shade with the soft black in a very small amount. Getcha. Hardest thing on cameras on an oblong surface is when I flip it, it changes the perspective on everything. On the artist buddy here. So we'll get that corner done. And come over here and do this corner over here. Just with like a little float. And that just deepens it. Makes it have just a little bit more of a oomph. We'll do the same thing to this side of this little rose right over here. Okay, and I think they should be glazed on the same sides. And see how that's just a little bit electric on there? I don't like the electricity. That's where the antique mauve helps. Okay, and I'll just tone that down just a little bit. Actually, I think I'll take that off. And we'll just do it again. So when you have undertones of electricity, putting stuff on top just keeps it electric. Okay, then we'll do the yellow. And then our soft black. And that's got to be smaller, so make sure you keep it kind of under control. Now, I'm moving fast enough that my paints are all still wet. So I also want to be careful I'm not lifting. I never would have thought to use such a dark color on a rose in the middle and stuff, but I really do like the effect of it. We'll go into this. I think we've got some green. So we'll take a round brush or a liner brush or something like that, maybe the Mighty Fine Liner, which when you get it all wet, it has the greatest little tip on it. And we'll just dab in the green goods there. And then I'll wipe my brush off and get into the yellow, and we'll add some yellow into that middle. Okay, now it's time to start putting in some leaves. I think the roses are going to be okay, standing by themselves. I think this one might need to be pinked up a little bit. So now that I've got that other color there, I can make that decision. Like now that I've got them done, I can say, oh, okay, a little bit more. Got medium on my brush. That'll work. If you ever need to darken in between, I could go in and add a little bit of floated color on those back petals that we talked about. You can add things if you need, as you need to. Under here, maybe we want that to be like slightly pinker. I don't think that it needs to be. I'm just showing you that you could. The leaves are going to be done using the light avocado. And it's just kind of a floated thing. I've got water in my brush. I could use medium as well. And I'm just going to make some leaf shapes. So I know I need some out over yonder. And not enough. I am going to use the medium. If I put too much water in, then I end up with soup. And if I put a little bit more medium, I just get transparent, which is perfect. Okay, and I want my leaves not to just be right, like I want them layered a little bit so that they're not all the same distance out. And if I put a whole bunch of transparent ones out like I'm doing right now, what's great about that is if I don't like the leaves all where I put them, then I can just leave them as filler leaves and not worry about it. Okay, so this gives me a chance to play without having to commit. So then I can go out here and I can say, okay, I want a little leaf out here. Leaves get smaller as they get away from the stem, so you want to make sure that you're doing smaller and smaller. And those will be the transparent little leaves that are just out from the design. Okay, and then this little guy right here, you know what I did with him is he really shouldn't be maybe cupped this way. I kind of am doing like a C-shaped design. There's S shapes, C shapes. I've got this on a C shape, but it would have been nicer to have him ending up turning out that way, but we'll just have to have him coming in this way. And then we'll have some little calyx coming out of there too. I think I want this area right here to be empty. Now over here on these guys right here, I want to get to a smaller brush. Because I don't want these to take over the rose. And I haven't actually inspected a rose to see if that's a true story, if the leaves are smaller on smaller roses. Somehow it doesn't sound right. But in this design, I get to decide. Okay, so we've got it kind of nicely something something going on here. Little forest. Now we decide where we want to darken things. All right, next we're going to shade with some plantation pine right next to the roses. Raw, that's very dark, isn't it? Okay, so we won't do that again. So what I did is I just lightened how much pressure I'm putting and making sure I'm doing some of this blendy stuff coming out. Look how cool that looks. Now it looks like there's leaves coming out of a misty kind of dreamy background. That's rockin' awesome. We can put just a little bit here. We can also serrate our edges, which means that we're going to come up here on the outside edge and just tuck in little bits of that razory kind of edge that roses have. Okay, we'll come in here. This one I think needs to be tucked. Notice, I mean, I've got to turn this piece all the time. If you don't know what this thing is that I'm on, that's probably irritating you because you can't tell what's going on. The challenge becomes, how do I show you the most real way that I paint without showing you how I would really paint it? And so when I'm on something like this on camera, it might seem irritating, but when you try it yourself, you'll be like thanking me in emails and stuff, like half the people, you know, I was going to say half the people of the world, but I think that might be an exaggeration. This little guy right here goes on these little adjusty bars. Okay, and then you can bring the level of painting up so that you're not having to hunch down over, giving yourself shoulder problems, back problems, posture problems, breathing problems, all kinds of problems. And the piece sticks on it because it's got this bar cloth on it. Okay, then you can turn it however you want it, and you can lock it with this little nub here. Oops. And that just locks it directly in place. So now you can turn your piece anyway, and if you have a particularly heavy piece, that's when you really will be like, oh, thank goodness. Okay, so that's what this guy is, and we call it an artist buddy because it helps you. It's like having a friend right there that will hold your piece for you. All right, so now let's get, I want this guy right over here to be shaded. Let's see, which one do I want? Maybe he's going to be the one that's underneath the big guy right there. So we'll shade him and round him out. He's the bigger background piece. So then he'll be shaded right on top, and then we can change that. We can darken it where they overlap. Okay, and now we'll go over there. And finish that thought right there. And we'll come over here and we'll give this guy a whole stem. And we can shade that stem by just touching down. Well, since that's the color I used, we probably can't shade it, can we? All right, and we'll make some little variegated leaves, little razory leaves. I'm liking the softness of these colors with this background. That's really making me happy. We haven't done any of the little guys. Okay, so we'll get him. These softer paintings with a lot going on in the background remind me a little bit of China painting. I've never China painted, but I love and admire the look of it. That depth that people get when they're doing it with the firing and everything is just amazing. Okay, so we're going to bring that color tucked into the edge. Okay, now I need to find something deeper to shade with. Now what I had done on the coaster box was I had used Nappa plus my green color, and I think this time I'm going to use the soft black plus my green color and deepen those things with that. Ooh, it's a really dark color. Get that right where that would be really dark coming out from behind that rose. The V's are really important when you're doing these kinds of things. Sometimes you can just shade all the way around and then go back and put in the V's. That's when you need the angle shader. You can't get into the dark V's with a flat brush as well. So that is where you really, because that just tucks right on in there, and I can squiggle with the back, making it complete better. Okay, so we'll go over here and give some of these the deeply darklies. And watch the roses go away. I think I'm almost just liking this like this. Okay. I love how roses, or not roses, but paintings tell their own story. And I'll bring just a little bit of this down next to that so it can tell its story completely. We could give these, I could just use the brush just to give it those veins if I wanted more detail. I wouldn't put a lot of detail on everything because then you're going to tell too much of the story. We really want this to be this dreamy, something's happening kind of story. I do need to sink this down into something. I don't know what yet. Let's do some glazing on this. Take this away. Do a little bit of glazing so we can see what we can see. Okay, we're going to burnt umber glaze. While putting the paint on your thumb. Okay, and this is where we'll switch to a really big angle shader. And get the sizing out of it. Okay, and then we'll just go into just a little bit. I'm going to go, see how I'm loading flat across my brush and not deep in my corner. I want to control how much paint is in my brush, and that's how I'm going to do it, by doing a shallow flat load. Now I'm not going to have a whole bunch of paint up in here. Okay, and now the water is going to help us maintain. So then we go around. Because it's an angle shader, that is going to make it just tuck the glaze right exactly where you want it going around the piece. Flat brushes leave flat things behind, and flat brushes are not necessarily your friend when it comes to glazing edges. Okay. See how that glazed edge is helping give this these roses an embedded feel, like they're part of the background now. I say any clock face that I didn't have to paint is my friend. That's what I say. Okay, so now we see if we are liking it, and I think of course we have to go a little bit deeper in spots. Definitely down here. That needs to be deepened and greenified probably. Okay, and that just kind of anchors that bottom. And I think we then, of course, have to reflect it up here. Would help if my paint was dry. Okay. Now we lay it on top of our other piece. Raw, running out of hands. And then, of course, this is very white right now, and that's not going to do us at all. So we've got to get this toned down to where we need it to be. But we don't want to tone it so far down. So we'll go the same thing with the glaze. And what's amazing is that because we use the matte decoupage medium, I was corrected by Deco Art, or I wasn't corrected, they didn't call me and say, hey, you're saying it wrong. I actually asked them, and it's spelled funny on the bottle, so I've been saying it completely wrong. It's just decoupage medium. If you have anything, because we're using the matte, then it takes the paint really nicely when you get ready to go glazing. If you have any, I've got a little spot right here that's lifting. If you have anything that lifts, then you just give it a little bit more of the decoupage medium. Okay, so, and then let it dry to see if it's really lifting or just misbehaving a little bit. Every now and again you miss a spot with your glue or whatever. This is where that Artist Buddy would be really handy. Okay, I want the words to show, but I don't want to make a debacle spectacle kind of thing out of them. I don't want them to be screaming on words. Some areas of the texture can grab just a little bit more, so I'm going to go back in between the texture and I'm just going to deepen the paper in those areas. And that gives it a little bit more continuous glazed look. And that way, and the nice thing is because I've got a lot of texture, I don't have to worry about doing perfect little floats or anything like that. Okay, now we'll lay this on here and see kind of where we're going. And this is where I'm using my camera, and this is where you would use your reducing glass. Okay, I can totally get the whole look from here. All right, well, what I do know is my rose is lonely. Let's flip this back around. I keep forgetting that I'm correct now. When I look up at my camera screen, it is actually backwards. So I'm right the old way, wrong the new way, and all messed up. It's a bad situation. Okay. So our pink is lonely, and what to do about our pink being lonely? That's the question. These and other questions to be solved. Well, I know that our gold is going to help resolve some stuff. Let's do gold because I know about the gold. Okay, and so what I'll do is I'm going to grab my compass. And this is a compass with a cap so that you can keep yourself from the stabby point, which is great, and then you just open it. Thing I love absolutely the best is the fact that there's lead on board in the back so that if you break it or run out, you have it. Okay? And this is what we're going to use to put our perfect band all the way around our oval. And I don't want it too big, but I don't think I want it quite that skinny. Okay? And that will show me exactly where I'm going to want my gold paint. If you don't have the gold powders yet, please do yourself a favor and get some because they are fantastic. You can get them in the starter set or you can get them in the 1-ounce jars. And these are, I think there's copper and they're not labeled very well on the labels. Platinum, silver, copper, brass, and these are the colors. Statuary bronze. Anyway, there's 8 colors, and they come in these little powders. This is brass, and it doesn't look like much when it's inside of there, but these are actually metal fibers. There's actual pieces of metal. And then what's really neat is I mix these with just a little varnish, and look at, they're on a paper towel, look how flexible they are, and look at how shiny they are. They are fantastically shiny. So you can decide how much sheen you want. You can mix them. You can put them into any medium you want, as long as it's not water, because when they dry they'll wipe off because there's nothing to hold them. You can put them in clay. You can put them in anything. While I have my coaster out here, I'm going to go ahead and fix that little coaster edge that I missed. There are 2 kinds of ways that you can put these on. This is really interesting. Look at how cloudy this medium is. That's the gloss varnish. Now it's got properties in it that the polyurethane part and stuff that I'm sure is part of the cloudiness. This is glass stain, and it's unopened glass stain. And look at how crystal clear that is. And it is basically, it's a varnish. It's not a varnish that I would use to protect from like ultraviolet rays and things like that, but it is it is a medium that you can mix this in. We'll put it that way instead. And gosh, it makes your ornaments look like they have little crystals attached. It's so clear. Okay, I'm going to use the brass color because I like its darkness. It's got a little bit of a darker look to it. And I could use either one of these. I use gloss because of the shininess. If I want it to be shiny, it takes on the characteristics of whatever medium you're using. So if you want a happy, shiny brass, then you would use gloss. If you want a not so shiny but still brass looking, you know, if you want it brassy but not so shiny, then you would use maybe something in a matte and not have so much of the sheen show through. So I've got these just side by side. I left these, I was doing talking about varnishes and stuff, and I had a pile of gloss varnish and a pile of glass stain side by side, and when this dries it's milky, and when this dries it's perfectly clear and it looks like a piece of glass. So it's amazing how the difference between the two mediums. Okay, so we're going to use a round brush, and in this case it'd probably be really smart to get out some stretchy tape. You do want to be careful that you don't be too harmful on your paper down here, if I can find an end. Okay, so with the stretchy tape, I don't know that I worry as much on the straight edges, blah, as I do on the curved edges. But what you do is you just simply lay it down, put on your glasses, and you apply it while you're pulling. All right, when we're applying our powders, I'm going to use a little dauber. Now, I really can tell you that I like the thicker stretchy tape a little bit better, the 1/4 inch, because I don't have to be as careful. But you really do want to tap straight up and down when you're doing tape. And these daubers have they're made out of high density foam, so they don't actually they don't actually absorb the paint, which makes them really good for not glomming on the paint. Now I'm going to do the sides here as well, and I really will get out my ink sweeper instead, and I'll show you why in a minute. But I want to mix enough powders. The great thing about using the powders instead of metal paint is, besides that it glistens and it's just as pretty, is you can mix as much of the powder into your medium as you want. That way you can base coat in one coat. And if you've ever tried to use metal paints, they just don't base coat very well at all. So I'm going to do this whole edge with this technique. Oh, let me show you the ink sweeper real quick. Okay, the ink sweeper is a long, wide thing. So instead of, like, it's problematic to have to tap, tap, tap with the little one around here, but to do the sides as well, this will just go boom, 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 and you move along much quicker. When you get done with them, you just rinse them out with cold water, and even if they're a little stained or whatever, you're fine. As long as they're soft, they're going to do their job. And I just chuck mine in my water basin, my artist water basin in the back thing, and I let them soak in there while I'm painting, and then 2 or 3 days later, when I'm ready to clean up from the project, I go wash them out. So that seems to work pretty fine for me. Alright, this is that moment that the Artist Buddy is brilliant at, because I'm trying to balance it on here and I'm trying to dab onto the sides of my piece, and it's not possible because I'm knocking the clock face out of my hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it onto this, and then I can dab very nicely and have a little bit of control here. Okay, so this is what that buddy piece is. If you had a friend, she'd probably be holding it for you, and then you'd be able to, like, get this. But I don't usually paint with my buddies. I wish I could paint with all my buddies across the country. Anyway, so that is what these are brilliant at. Alright, we're going to do the same process with this. I'm going to make my band slightly skinnier. Okay, and then I am going to try, we're in the other room trying to figure out what color to paint the band, and the consensus is that it needs to be a brown, but I believe it needs to be a brown that can be a red. But I think a red would be really obnoxious, so what I'm going to do is try a couple of colors. Another thing that, so I've got critics in the other office, right? So in my design team, which is fine. But one of the things they said was, this is a strange place for a crackle right here. So what you can do, and I think they're absolutely right, it's a little too, it's too much in the negative space area of the design. So I'll just take my base coat colors and get those out, take my brush, and then I can just totally go in with a little bit of a slip slappiness over here, probably darker, and almost erase them with paint so they can just tone back just a little bit. And maybe even this guy over here, just on those fat parts of the cracks. And then it can stay there, but it's just subdued just a little bit. So in order to test my colors, I'm going to use my round brush, and I'll use my, and this time I don't want, okay, I forget, lock it down, don't want it to roll around on me. So I'm just going to come over here with a reddish brown, and we'll see what we think. Raw, not too wide. I'll be making all kinds of repairs. Okay, so there's a band color. And now we'll place it on here. And we'll look and see what we think. Gotta stand up. And I think that's gonna be a little bit dark. Okay. Definitely just a little bit dark. And now we'll try espresso. We'll see what we think of that. Well, that's better as far as darkness goes. But it almost looks accidental. Don't know if we want it to look accidental or not. Okay, that's better. Okay, the winner was actually a mix of colors. If you have an area with a line, I'm going to use this micro eraser, and I'll show you it compared to the size of the Mighty Fine liner. That's how micro it is. It is super duper tiny, but that gets me right in next to things to erase lines that I need to erase. Anyway, the look, this is a mix of espresso and antique maroon. And it's just one coat so that it doesn't get too overbearing on it and stuff. And I'm waiting for my sides to dry before I can touch that stuff. Okay, so we need to deepen in stuff here, so we'll do that while we're waiting. We need to get a little bit more of our red color working throughout. And that is going to happen with our, I think we could probably use some of that antique maroon in there. I can also use our Napa. I'm worried about the Napa being just a little too much. Or maybe a little kiss of it would be cool. Get you up on here. And let's check it out. Pull out some antique maroon. I don't know why I persist in thinking I can see without my glasses on my face. Get a little bit of that spread into this area. And then we'll do a little bit at the top as well. Those kisses of pinks and reds are what will carry our color around. We need to get a couple more strong kinds of leaves, I think, down in this corner. So we'll go back to our smaller brush. Another green, if I can dig a hole in it. And yes, you're not the only one that pops holes in their paint to use them. Perfectly fine to do that. But this is lonely down here, so we've got to get this unlonelied. Get you a little leaf. Kind of fill it in just a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more there. Okay, and then one of the things that we talked about, let's see if it's safe to put this down. One of the things that we talked about was spreading our roses down onto this piece, and I think I kind of like that idea. So what I'll do is I'll take my gray pencil and, you know, I don't know if I like that idea or not. Like on one hand, love it. On the other hand, not so sure. So we would maybe spill down, if we're going to do it, spill down a bud, or maybe another rose. Maybe this one can come off, and that can be a bud over there. And that needs to go straight, so that's going to move. And then maybe one more rose down here, and then with the greenery. So let's see what we think. So we'll take our mix of our green and our pink. And then this is going to create almost our S design. And this, of course, would need to be pretty faded out. Make sure we're leading it over there the way we should. Now we'll go into just the green, deepen it. I'll paint this one as a little rose bud, and then that one just as a bud. Everything has a skin. We've got hot spring weather. Okay, I'll get my medium. I think I'm going to have to switch to a smaller brush. I have gone through almost every size of this set of brushes today. And heel and toe. And maybe we'll get another bud over here so that we don't have them be too lonely. So we'll have them be in two sets of threes. Try to think of where the best placement would be. Maybe someplace in the middle. Maybe one of them can be slightly open. That's an idea. And repaint, because that one came out wider. Maybe it's a little teeny rose happening there. Okay, and then this guy down here, I'm negating the whole purpose. Okay, now I'm going to take this off, make sure I've got my alignment. And I'll have him pointing downwards. And I want him smaller, but kind of finished. And notice that I've continued painting these in the same manner as I started the others. That way they're consistent, even though they're not the same as I intended to paint them. Okay, and then we'll wait for that to dry, and then we'll have to glaze and stuff. Let's see how it looks. Okay, that's kind of cool looking. Now we'll take that Raphael, which I think is probably dried by now. It's been a lot of talking about a lot of different things. And I'm going to use a mixture of the plantation pine and the light avocado. And we'll pull up right alongside, right on it really, and right over. And that needs to probably be then thicker because it got dark and heavy. Okay, and the same thing's going to have to happen down here to decide where that's actually coming from. And then we're going to have to soften that with some leaves. Okay, this guy's going to need a little stemmy poo. So now we need leaves. Leaves! Okay, and so then these guys are going to get some leaves coming out there. I could move this board, but I want it for placement. And the same thing here, this little guy right here gets some leaves coming out. Get somebody a little bit darker leaf just to give it a little bit of body, and then we can lead the eye over there by darkening this leaf. So we'll walk it on over. You can have a couple of things coming out to the sides. And remember, out here we want these things to be fading. And these are really nondescript little leaves. A little busy there. Okay, I like the spillage, I think. And we're going to go into the Napa mix to glaze the one side of the rose. Too watery. That's why we use glaze. I'm going to go ahead and glaze its throat as well. But I'm not going to give it all that detail, I don't think. These guys right up here, same thing. Let's give this one-sided and then glazed. Just mute it out just a little bit more. And then let's go ahead and put in some slip-slapped antique maroon and bring that red out into our rose garden. It's just kind of floated. Don't want it dark. This indicates maybe other roses back there. And we could shade to give those just a little bit around the clock. Alright, we're going to spatter using the 1/2 inch White Wonder, and we're going to spatter using our brown. It's like almost like our mother color here. Lots of water, heavy handled brush that I can't find. I use this guy right here. Spatter. Always test off on your palette, and then we want that poking out and coming out of our roses. And then we'll have a little bit on the opposite side. We'll go into a little bit of our Napa, just such a strong color. And that is going to be just a little bit more pink. Just, that almost looks like, it almost looks like I don't like it. That's what that almost looks like. So I'm going to go up here and I'm just going to blot that down. The time to take spatters off is when they are fresh. And so we'll go into soft black. I can poke a hole in it. And that anchors down at the bottom just a little bit more. Make sure you're doing your spatter directionally, meaning that if I'm this way and I want my spatters to lay that way, that my brush is aiming across it. If I do it this way, I'm going to get skinny spatters that way, so make sure that you're thinking about that stuff when you're doing spatters. It's not snow. I guess it could be snow on yours if you want it to be snowy. And then of course we need to spatter with our gold. Okay, and then we've got our spattering in the gold, which can kind of be all around the edges and throughout. Just adds a little bit of sparkle. It glints when it catches the light. It's great. After a little deliberation, we have decided that we need a couple of greeneries and flowers up here. And so we're going to rosebud, and then I think rosebud, and of course greenery, and then have something coming off over here and wrapping around a little bit and dropping into this space. Okay, so then we start with our process. You know, this gets a little bit long, and you're welcome to obviously turn it off at this point, but sometimes it's good to watch, to quickly walk through I already know what I'm doing stage of things, because it cements in some things that you heard earlier in the video. And my paint has a big old paint goober. But I will have to have fresh paint to be able to do this. Okay, so we've got medium in our brush, a little bit of pink, great big green thing, and make that thin. And so we're going to want to fill this area in just a little bit and bring this area out. Okay, so then we've got to bring some of this out here to support roses and stuff. Bring that around. It's just like a scribbly scumbly kind of thing. Make it finer as it comes out and around. And then we can start placing a couple of our little leaves. Okay, we'll bring this out just a little bit. And we can darken. I think that's actually kind of dark enough. We can't have more weight up here, so like you got to think about gravity, and so you don't want more weight at the top than you do at the bottom. So we can't have more weight in color or in bodily weight or mass weight. Okay, now I'll switch to smaller brush, and we'll load 4 roses. And let's see, this one needs to be, I think we're going to make these guys poking their heads down. So we'll flip it over. Okay, we'll go, so it's going to be a big small rose. So it's going to be like this one, but it's going to be a small version. Wah! I got pink all over the end of my brush. Okay, and we'll make this be like slightly reduced size maybe. Oh yeah. Time to wash out the brush. last stroke. Okay, and there's a little rose, and then let's make another little guy, maybe a little partial guy over here. And it can be slightly fussy, but not quite so open. And just a little bud down there. Very badly shaped bud. Okay, and then gotta come out here with our other little flower. And then over here. How many to put is the question. That is definitely the question. I think I need one more big one, and I think we need it to be facing out. I'd like it to go over the bridge here, and I don't think I can accomplish that because of the big skip. So let's go for right to the edge, kind of. Oops, I guess I gotta close up another level. And maybe one more. Over. And then we're gonna have to fill this in just a little bit more, I think. Alright, now let's get some leaves tucked. Okay, now this is where I want them to be, like in my face while I'm painting them, so that I can see where things are going, kind of. And I like the idea of them being onto the clock face. So I'm doing my leaves right now so that I don't have to worry about waiting for things to dry. So like right now I'll just go ahead and fill in leaves while I'm doing the drying game. My piece is shifting just a little bit. And we can go in with a little bit of our plantation pine and give some deeply dark moments in there. I need a couple more leaves, I think. Coming out over here. Okay, and then this can be a little bit stronger coming into the clock. And maybe even one more little pinky bud. Just a little drip, drip, drip of buds. Okay. And I'm waiting to glaze, but I'll take my Raphael and a lighter version, so I've got a little water in my brush, of the green, and do all the calyxes at the same time. And they can just be nondescript. They don't even really have to be too much into anything. And these can just be little tendrils. This can be tendrils coming out here. Oops. Got just that little bit. Coming into the clock now, that makes me happier. And now I think we're probably dry enough to glaze. We'll go on to the antique maroon. And these are going to be lighter weight, so we don't want them to get away from us as far as color goes. And I'm just glazing the throats right now. Going with a little teeny bit of the... If we glaze them down too much, we won't be able to see any of the detail, which sometimes can be a good thing, right? And we'll get the soft black. Just that touch of it on the one side. Okay, and then the debate has been whether or not we need any of this darker pink up at the top. And so I don't know if the answer is yes or no, but we're going to try a little bit of it coming out of here onto the background. And bring out some of that red into that area. Maybe like those roses are growing in there. And that's antique maroon. Bring that up and in, and maybe then we don't have that question. Then it's just fantasy roses in the background that we don't know if they're there or not there. Okay. There we go. I think I like it. Yeah, this looks like I could use just a little bit deepening. Now the idea is that you can hang this in, put this in this iron stand, and then of course you can change it out for seasonal artwork, which we've got demonstrated on the website. But if you decide you want this iron stand to be like slightly like an antique metal color or something like that, you could very easily sponge this with the rust colored metal paints and give it a little bit of a patina on there, and that might make you pretty happy. The way that we're going to attach the, and I've got to drill my hole still, but the way that we're going to attach is we're going to use hot glue and then quickly lay it on there straight, and so you'll want to have a good attitude and a good place while you're doing this, just to make sure, because you don't get too many chances with that. And that is the process that we're going to do, and then I'm going to varnish it with a nice, probably a matte varnish. I don't think this should be too shiny being a clock. Alright, we're going to add just a little more shading. The antique maroon coming out of here. Just to give it that color carrying. Make it look like there's stuff growing down in there. mix just a little bit of burnt umber with it. We don't have that abrupt stop and start. I think we could use a couple little leaves coming out too. There we go. And now we'll glue.